Is it possible that the internet as we know it died in 2016 and that basically everything you read, view, or watch online is now generated by AI and machine learning? Well, crazy enough, there is actually some truth to this theory. Yes, we're going to be talking today about the dead internet theory. The idea that most of the internet is now bots and controlled by state actors and people in smoky rooms trying to make you think what they want you to think. This is a crazy theory, but what's even crazier is there is actually some truth to it. So let's dive into the dead internet theory on this episode of The Jason Hassett Show now.
Do it live!
I am not going to exploit.
200. A Pizza Express in Woking.
Your line of questioning is transphobic.
Now watch this drive.
Fucking thing sucks!
Hello everybody and welcome back to The Jason Hassett Show. I am of course Jason Hassett, as probably goes without saying. And this week we're going to cover something that one of you fine subscribers have been calling for a while, which is the dead internet theory. And thank you to Nasir Masti, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, who has been a long-time subscriber to my documentary channel, has been asking for a documentary on this for a while. Unfortunately, as you probably know if you watch the documentary channel, I don't publish very often. I'm still working on one that was supposed to be out, I think 4 months ago. I'm hoping to have out next week. We'll see, knowing that channel. But basically, diving into anything on that channel is a long-term investment. And I just haven't got around to dead internet. And I'm frankly not sure whether I want to dive into it for that length of time. But I thought, given that he has asked a few times, and given that I do love this subscriber's feedback in the comments all of the time, and genuinely am interested in this phenomenon of the dead internet, that this channel would be the perfect place to explore it. So with that being said, we're going to dive into this. If you're new here, essentially the way this works is I have gathered research from the interwebs, which is vastly unreliable, and as we may find out today, also not real. Let's find out. And of course, that means that there will be some information in this that's either incorrect or just missing, for example. So if I'm missing anything or if you feel like I've got anything wrong, please do head down to the comments and let us know. What I'm trying to build here is a community of people who are interested in learning new things and having discussions. So instead of the usual, hateful comments in the comment section, we'd love to make that a place where you can get feedback. And while you're down there, why not hit subscribe, hit the like button, and click that notification bell so you can be notified whenever a new episode of The Jason Hassett Show is out. Maybe because you don't like it, but if you do, please do hit that. And with all that being said, let's jump into the dead internet theory. So for those of you who are unaware, let's jump into just quickly what is it, for example, and like the core idea of this. And then we're going to chronologically go through like how it would have happened, where it came from, the evidence behind it, and so on. So the dead internet theory is, at the moment at least, like JFK, a conspiracy theory claiming that the internet as we know it died around 2016. And what remains is largely fake or automated content rather than real-world human activity. According to this theory, bots powered by AI and a handful of paid influencers now generate the majority of online posts, videos, interactions, and the direction of powerful organizations, often alleged to be governments or big corporations. The core idea of this is that proponents believe there is a concerted effort to control the population by flooding the web with algorithmically generated content and bot interactions, thereby displacing genuine human discourse. And in their view, the internet has become what's called a Potemkin village, a facade of real content masking a mostly hollow scripted reality. A Potemkin village is the alleged idea of, is it Grigory Potemkin? I could be getting the name wrong, but a Russian academic who basically set up a false, completely fake village back in 18th century, 17th century to prove a point. I can't remember the exact story, but the idea is that, you'd have fake fronts on these villages and it's not real, like there's no one inside, there's no real house behind it. So that's what a Potemkin village is. Maybe we can do a dive into Potemkin at some point. But anyway, the death in 2016, the specific theory pins 2016 or early 2017 as the time when the internet died. This is meaning that this is kind of like a tipping point for this, the point at which authentic content was overwhelmed by AI material, and that everything that we knew about the internet made it a fun, authentic, and human place is said to have vanished kind of around this time frame, replaced with sterile, repetitive content. And notably, this coincides with advancements in machine learning and great leaps in AI. So Google at this point took a huge leap in machine learning. And there was also the emergence of deep fakes, which was a huge story in and around 2017 that they're calling the catalyst. So for this conspiracy to kind of hold weight, we need to think of the idea that at one point the internet was a real place, which makes sense, especially for those of you who've been using it basically since it started, like myself, where, there was very few pages out there. You could very much tell web pages were built by real people. You could kind of interact with them for the most part. And technology to do bot-generated content just wasn't feasible at the time. Although, that being said, apparently the US has had, alien gravity-defying spacecraft since the 1980s. So who knows? But in the early days, most content on the internet was clearly human-made, is the point. So personal websites, forum, blogs, unique communities, interactions were slower paced and not dominated by algorithms. And there's kind of a nostalgia now for this old internet, which was messy and creative, and a place to kind of discuss ideas without kind of overwhelming noise, versus today internet, which has become kind of a commercialized, homogenized place to be. Even before 2016, though, as we talked about, automated activity was growing online. Web crawlers and so-called good bots, like search engine indexers, have always constituted some internet traffic. So, if you go back to 1998, for example, that's when Google kicked off. And even before then, you had Ask Jeeves, you had Yahoo, all these guys trying to do search. And essentially, they had what were called good bots. So these were just pieces of code that would essentially browse the web for you and could get limited meta information. The idea of these was to index things. And there was obviously other reasons to do it, but search became kind of the big one. But by the 2010s, bad bots, so spam bots, scrapers, fake accounts, etc., were multiplying. For example, various studies show that over 40 to 50% of traffic on the internet in many years comes from non-humans or bots. In fact, in some years since the internet started, there has been verified times where bot traffic has actually exceeded human traffic. One study found, for example, that 40% of traffic was human in 2014, meaning that 60% was from bots. This growing bot presence is a real phenomenon driven by things like ad fraud, DDoS attacks, data scraping, and this obviously provides massive fuel for this conspiracy theory. And in fact, there were some almost sci-fi moments on this timeline leading up to 2016 that made people realize how much of the internet could be falsified. For instance, at one point in 2013, an internal report revealed up to half of YouTube's traffic was artificial, generated by bots posing as viewers. This freaked out some YouTube engineers. They even coined the term the inversion for the nightmare scenario where YouTube's systems might start mistaking bots for real users and real users for bots, which is insane. The notion of an inversion where fake activity becomes the norm is the exact kind of situation that dead internet theory later imagines on a whole internet scale. Around the same time, online ad fraud schemes were uncovered in which millions of malware-infected computers generated fake clicks, fake mouse movements, and even fake social media logins to simulate human browsing, essentially a simulacrum of the internet itself, where real ad impressions were served to fake visitors. The thing is, you might be asking, if you haven't really thought about this before, like, why would it matter, or like, why would there be so many bots compared to humans? The simple fact is money. If you think about it, like, if you build a website tomorrow, right? So I have a website at the moment, I have a few different websites, and as a web developer, a developer in general, an app developer, whatever, building big systems in the past, a lot of websites and apps and so on build themselves on monetization, right? So, for example, Facebook, you'll see ads in the news feed. You'd see ads on YouTube, watching this video. And I, for example, gain 55% of whatever the ad revenue is. Well, not at the moment because I still haven't got 1,000 subscribers on this channel, so it's not monetized yet. But when we do get 1,000 subscribers, then I would earn 55% of the revenue from the ads you saw clicking into this video, if you saw any, if you're not on premium, right? So think about it in terms of just monetization. If I know that I get 55% of that ad revenue and I have 1,000 servers sitting here, then it would be in my interest to get all of those 1,000 servers to repetitively and continuously watch my videos, knowing that all of those people, those viewers, which are just bots, computers opening a browser and viewing a video, will be giving me 55% of revenue. Now, obviously, on the flip side of that, this is really bad for Google in the long run, but in the short run for advertisers, because advertisers are essentially paying for that server to watch one of my videos, a server that is never going to buy one of their products. So, that's bad in the long run for then Google and YouTube, because it would mean that Google and YouTube would sell ads, but the people who pay for the ads aren't getting a return on their investment, so they're going to invest less in ads, which means then Google needs to charge for its servers and try and put more and more stuff behind a paywall of premium to get around the bots. In fact, this is why Elon was so pushed on X having that kind of monetized blue tick, because that was the simplest way to get rid of bots. It was also the easiest way to make some quick cash. But as I say, there's always a modicum of truth behind any grift, right? Behind any good con. But anyway, not to say it's a con. I'm just saying, there can be two reasons for doing something. But yeah, that's why you would have a lot of bots, because you would have someone, say, set up a website, put Google ads on it, or put ads on it in general, and then mount up tons and tons of impressions. Or, for example, if you have an Instagram account and you say you want 100,000 subscribers or followers, there are people who will sell you 100,000 followers by setting up bot farms that just subscribe to your account. So the problem is it's this cat and mouse game. It's like home security, The robbers are always one step ahead, generally speaking. And unlike robbing a house, which is high risk and relatively low reward, unless you've got a lot of stuff in your house, you can do this stuff anonymously on a massive scale. So it's low reward in a singular level, but it's massively high reward if you can do it other ways. Now, the dead internet theory talks about other stuff like full control that we'll get into, but that is one key reason why this would have started out from the offset. By the early 2010s, social media had become the dominant online arena, and it too had a bot problem. Automated Twitter accounts and Facebook bots were already being used for spam and influence. One famous example was the use of fake social media accounts to influence politics. During the 2016 US election, there was extensive bot and troll activity, some backed by state actors, amplifying certain messages. In fact, numerous Twitter bots posting identical political messages were documented in 2016. Governments and organizations using swarm bots known as astroturfing to sway opinions is a real phenomenon. We know this for a fact. Russia's troll farms being well-known cases from 2016. And obviously Russia and China are big proponents of this. We have a lot of evidence behind it. But let's not be naive here and think that Europe and America are innocent in all this. They're obviously not. It's just obviously, you're going to hear less about that because you're listening to American and European media sources generally. Even this platform is American owned when you think about it. Not this channel. I mean, this channel is Mexican, Irish owned. But anyway, though on specific platforms rather than the entire internet, we saw this stuff. So these realities that some online discourse is orchestrated by bots or fake personas later gets extrapolated by dead internet theorists to an extreme global conspiracy. Another shift before we get to 2016 and beyond was the increasing power of algorithms determining what we see. Google had long used algorithmic ranking, but around 2015 and 2016, Google integrated more machine learning, e.g., RankBrain, into their search results. And major social platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram moved from chronological feeds to algorithm curated feeds. Critics say this made the internet feel more closed off. People increasingly saw only what algorithms decided, possibly limiting exposure to authentic niche content. Dead internet theorists later cite this as well, claiming Google and others censor or hide huge swaths of the web to create the illusion of smaller, controlled internet. And just a quick fact check on this. It's true that search engines don't index everything and prioritize some sites over others, and that link rot has made some older content vanish, but there's no direct evidence of deliberate grand purge or of a deliberate grand purge. It's largely a combination of normal algorithmic tuning, content removal, and defunct sites. I'm going to, throughout this, have some of these in this document, like these fact checks. But I don't really like the word fact check because, they tried to use that too much during COVID and it really pissed me off. They're like, fact check. We know that is not the case. We know nothing leaked from a lab. And it's like, no, what you're saying is at the moment, there's no overwhelming evidence to prove it leaked from a lab. You don't know it didn't leak from a lab. So when I say fact check, I'm going to just premise that by saying what I mean by that is, there is no conclusive or overwhelming evidence to prove this is the case, right? So let's just in everything, not just on this channel, when you hear the phrase fact check, treat it as we are aware so far, to the best of our knowledge, not like this is an absolute fact. You know, it's an absolute fact that you need air to breathe. Everything else is relatively, relatively to the best of our knowledge. But yeah, so this, just a final point before we jump into the alleged turning point of 2016. Obviously as well, like it is more, in terms of the algorithms and stuff, I think a lot of the time they take it to be kind of like, well, you know, we wanted to make it so that the algorithms were better for our users. You know, we wanted to show content to the users that want it. And sometimes that is accurate. And again, this is one of those things where, yes, that is a byproduct of what they did. So, for example, I use X a lot for F1 content. And when I start seeing like political content on X, generally speaking, I will purposely skip over it. Like I won't engage with it. I won't like it. And frankly, I won't even read it because the algorithm is also watching. The algorithm sounds scary, but like the system is basically also checking how long you focus on something. So if you want to get rid of, like I've noticed, I know this is a bit of a side tangent, but one of the things, like a few friends of mine were like, why would you go on X? You know, it's just all right-wing Nazi content. And it makes me really interested because I then go and look at their feed and realize they're commenting on only stuff that is right-wing and then wondering why they're getting lots of right-wing content. And vice versa, left-wing people as well, like commenting only on left-wing stuff on Twitter and Instagram, whatever, and then going, all I get is these leftists on here. And it's like, you're skewing the algorithm unknowingly towards yourself, right? The idea that they sell behind that is to ensure that you get the best content for you. But let's not be naive here. They are trying to keep you on the platform for as long as possible because that's how they make money. The longer you're on, the more ads you see, the more revenue they make, right? It's a simple fact. Anyway, let's get to it. The alleged turning point. So why 2016? Let's talk about this first, right? Because this is an interesting point. Dead internet theory believers zero in on 2016, like I said, sometimes early 2017, as the moment the internet essentially went dead behind the scenes. And there's several reasons why this year is cited, right? So first is advances in AI. So Google's implementation of neural network-based algorithms in search and the rapid progress in AI content generation are pointed to as enabling a new wave of fake content. For example, Google's RankBrain and other AI began influencing search results around 2016, which theorists interpret as AI starting to decide what content people see, as opposed to human-designed algorithms specifically built to decide what you see. That's a very important distinction because an AI can learn, right? I know people say AI doesn't learn. I've had this argument. I know I've had this argument before, but the point is, AI learns in the exact same way that children do, pattern recognition, but on a massive scale, right? So it learns, and I know people will say, oh, it's not really learning, it's just pattern recognition. Kids learn by pattern recognition. They fall, they hit their head, they realize that if they fall again, they're going to hurt their head, right? They've realized the pattern. It's as simple as that, right? Deep fakes and synthetic media. So in 2017, the first deep fake tools appeared, allowing the creation of ultra-realistic fake image and video. The spread of deep fakes, face-swapped videos, starting in late 2017, is cited as evidence that anything can be faked now. And if you can't trust your eyes, then the thinking goes that the internet could easily be full of AI-generated content that people don't know. This is a real technological advancement. Deep fakes are real, but they were relatively niche in 2017. The theory dramatically extends this to assume most content is now fake. Like, that makes it difficult for me in terms of 2017, 2016. Like, I think if you said that the internet died last year, it would be a little bit easier for me because I think it's fair to say now that, AI generated content has gotten far superior to where it was. 2017, it wasn't great, but to play devil's advocate on that as well, I do know that like the stuff that you see in terms of like what you actually get access to and see is the stuff that isn't in the lab anymore. So, there's nothing to say the AI that we're seeing right now isn't the stuff that was developed, 8 years ago or in development 8 years ago and was seeded out, or the best minds had it 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Could be the case. We used to hear all the time that like Toshiba, for example, had like hard drive technology 10 years advanced on what we were getting back in the day. And there was some truth to that. So, I don't think that is a stopping point in my belief in this in any way. Many internet users noted a change in the mid-2010s, a sense that online culture had become very samey and corporate as well. The dead internet theory picks up on this sentiment. The online manifesto asks rhetorically, have you noticed how sterile fiction has become? How it follows the same template over and over again? Proponents argue that after 2016, popular content, music, movies, viral stories, started feeling formulaic, as if algorithmically generated to cater to the lowest common denominator. They believe that this is because AI and paid influencers took over content creation, churning out safe, repetitive material to keep people docile. It's true that Hollywood and online content often rely on formulas, but of course there's still human creators behind most of it. This is another like fact check, as we talked about earlier. The theory attributes this trend to AI manipulation rather than human commercialization. Just one, again, devil's advocate to play on that, because I do think there's a fair point to this. A lot of content is very samey these days, but I mean, you could say that to any industry that becomes kind of grandfather, gets older. Like if you look at your iPhone now, for example, like I have an iPhone 16 Pro at the moment, which is actually what I'm recording this on. But I had an iPhone 13 Pro for like 3-4 years. And honestly, while the new 16 Pro is better in a lot of ways, it's not like a massive difference. Even looks wise, it's very similar. If you look at cars, like unless you're a car buff like myself, like I'm massively into cars, you're probably just, they all kind of look similar now. So, I don't know if I take that as a thing. I think it's just people tend to just double down on whatever works and copy whatever works. So I don't know if that in itself is a big, a big selling point. But anyway, the high-profile revelations of social media manipulation in 2016 from bots, troll farms, Cambridge Analytica, using data to target people, etc., left a lingering idea that shadowy forces can orchestrate that we see online agendas. In 2016, for example, Facebook and Twitter were found to have hundreds of thousands of fake accounts linked to state-sponsored propaganda efforts. The real news may have primed people to believe a larger conspiracy, is some of the thinking here, just to give, again, a nice weighted debate on this. If parts of the internet discourse was fake and guided in 2016, who's to say most of it isn't fake now? Again, scale is key. Influence operations are real but limited in scope, according to the evidence. The conspiracy leap is imagining nearly all content is orchestrated. Yeah, so I think it really depends on what is your limitation for this. Like, for me, I don't know if I would count like over 50% as being dead internet. But then that is the majority. I'd probably want it to be like super majority, like 75% and above. But like 50%, 52% in 2016, it could easily be over 75% now. I guess it depends on what your threshold is. Because I would say that at least 5 to 10% of the internet is definitely still real people. I mean, if you're watching this and you're real, I know I'm real. So there is still some real content. I think a lot of YouTube is still real. And I think it's still quite obvious when it's AI. And like, you know, we can tell most of the faceless stuff, I guess, still. But I don't know. I mean, what's your limitation on that? Let me know in the comments. Like, what is your threshold? You know, like we know it was 52% in 2016. Like, is that for you enough to say, well, then the internet did die in 2016? I mean, mathematically, you could say it is. You know, the internet is majority bots now, and we know all the generated content and so on. Let me know what you think. I don't know. I need to have a think about this, but I'm thinking like 75%, 80%. So I'm gonna have to see new studies and so on. So by 2018, even mainstream tech writers were asking how much of the internet is fake. That's literally the title of New York Magazine's article from 2018 that dead internet theorists often cite. In that piece, journalist Max Reed pointed out several jaw-dropping points. Less than 60% of web traffic each year is human, sometimes much less. YouTube had the bot inversion scare that he pointed out at that point, half of views being fake. Even engagement metrics on giant platforms are unreliable or gamed. For example, Facebook was caught grossly inflating video view stats around 2016 and 2017, and sites like Instagram had problems with click farms and fake likes flooding their system. Max Reed noted that everything that once seemed real now seems at least slightly fake on the modern internet. It highlighted very high levels of bot participation, fraudulent traffic, and curated fakeness, like fake followers, fake reviews, etc. Dead internet theorists latched onto this, citing it as proof that a majority of the internet is fake. In reality, the article stopped short of any grand conspiracy. It framed it as a culmination of various scams and systematic quirks. But notably, Max Reed even mused that 2018 felt like the year we passed an inversion perceptually. There's also been lots of these weird viral patterns that have made people very uneasy about this. One example is the I hate texting tweets that started around 2020. Twitter users noticed dozens of accounts posting nearly identical tweets like, I hate texting, I just want to hug you, or I hate testing, come over and cuddle me, each getting tens of thousands of likes. The wording would vary slightly, but the pattern was obvious. Were these real people copying each other or bots? No one was sure. By 2019 and 2020, average users had grown accustomed to the idea that bots are everywhere. Twitter was routinely purging millions of fake accounts. Facebook was battling bot accounts and fake news in the wake of the 2016 election. There was also cultural memes calling people NPCs, a joke insult implying that some folks were just repeated scripts and have no independent thoughts. Just to point out as well, some of these weren't actually talking about actual bot accounts. They just meant that, you know, a lot of people didn't kind of come up with their own opinions, which is not new, and were just repeating whatever their friend group or, you know, media biases or whatever said on both sides of any political aisle. So let's jump into the 2020s when the actual term dead internet theory gained traction, thanks to a single lengthy post on an obscure forum that went viral in conspiracy circles. This was posted on Agora Road's Macintosh Cafe, an esoteric online forum. So Illuminati Pirates Manifesto is sprawling, but we'll give you just the kind of major points at the moment. So the first one is that the internet, as we've discussed, was emptied of people in 2016 or 2017. After that, what's left is AI generated content. He literally states that the internet died and now is empty and devoid of people. Most people online are not real, essentially was one of them. All modern entertainment content is algorithmically generated. Google and big tech are in on it, essentially. Government AI gaslighting is a thing, perhaps the boldest claim of all of this, saying that the US government is behind this AI-driven illusion, and that corporations are colluding with the government on this, hiring influencers on their payroll, and basically trying to get their, way of doing things the way they want the world to think. They're controlling it using this. And it's worth noting that the original post had some offensive language and some creepy pasta vibes. Yeah, great. A journalist later contacted the author, who turned out to be an operations supervisor at a logistics company in California. He chose to remain anonymous and behind an alias, and he insisted that he truly believes in this theory. This then spread massively across the internet, mainly across Reddit, within the subreddit conspiracy, and even the Joe Rogan subreddit, which has a huge following because Joe is a massive conspiracy theorist. Love that guy, but a massive conspiracy theorist. But it finally moved into the mainstream with an Atlantic article in August of 2021. This was the big moment that brought the dead internet theory to a wide audience. The Atlantic titled their article, "Maybe you missed it, but the internet died 5 years ago." Catchy one, written by Caitlin Tiffany. The Atlantic also interviewed Caroline Busta, founder of New Models, an art media platform, who said that, of course, a lot of that post is paranoid fantasy, but agreed that the overarching idea had some credibility to it. The article noted that the theory had become fodder for YouTube explainers and other media by late 2021, basically saying all of this somewhat validates the idea that even if you don't want to go as far as Illuminati did, there is some truth to this, as we've already discussed. If it's over 50%, can you really say that the internet is mostly humans or not dead in some ways? Conclusion of The Atlantic, though, was that Tiffany ultimately reassured that the internet isn't truly dead because the very existence of weird, lively communities like the forum where this wild theory was posted in the first place is proof of life. The best proof I have that the internet isn't dead, she said, is that I found an absurd rant about how the internet is so dead. It's a fair point in many ways. But nonetheless, this Atlantic piece gave mainstream credibility to this dead internet theory in many ways, which is kind of the irony of it. Around this time and into 2022, tech commentators weighed in. Some considered it a modern creepypasta, a spooky internet lore combining truth and fiction. Basically, any good fiction needs to have a modicum of truth inside of it. When you read some of the wildest, most eccentric fiction and sci-fi, some of it is brilliant because you can see it happening. That's what I loved about Battlestar Galactica. It felt like this was a future you could envision happening. As wild as it got in sci-fi terms, it felt real. It was grounded in some sort of reality. And I think that's what makes this theory seem, so alluring and so interesting, is that there is some truth to it. We know that for many, many years, most of the internet has been bots. So I think that's what makes it interesting. So this was massively booted into high gear and revived thanks to the rise of ChatGPT in 2022, late 2022, early 2023. Image generators like DALL-E and Stable Diffusion started pumping out art by the bucket load, and suddenly ordinary users realized anyone could cheaply generate blogs, product reviews, forum posts, and even images, and now video with minimal effort using AI. And we got to remember as well, the reason that there's a lot more credibility to the dead internet theory is because, yes, we got our hands on this in 2023, but the software itself was in development for a long time. OpenAI, for example, have been working on this in the background since, I believe, 2017, 2016. So who knows how good it is in the background compared to what we get publicly. In early 2023, some articles posited that the theory's premise might come true just via market forces, not due to a secret plot, but simply because AI-generated content, slop, is everywhere. For instance, Google's search team noted that they were being inundated by SEO-optimized websites that felt like they were being created for search engines instead of for people, often likely generated themselves by AI. Google spokesperson even acknowledged that the generative AI was contributing to a rapid rise in such low-value content, threatening to drown out human-written information. This is a real concern. And in 2023, people coined the term AI slop or AI spam to describe the flood of mediocre AI content, whole websites emerging as basically automated blogs with gibberish articles designed to attract ad clicks. Maybe not before, but definitely as soon as ChatGPT became a thing that anyone could access, it became much, much, much easier for people just trying to make a quick buck to nefarious state actors to generate content cheaply and on a massive scale. Theory picked up new attention at this point. Forbes ran an explainer in January of 2024 calling dead internet theory a belief that most internet content is now bots and AI. In 2024, Facebook users noticed bizarre AI-generated images going viral, often with equally bot-like comments. One set featured shrimp Jesus, which were images of Jesus mixed with shrimp that circulated widely. Posts of these odd images were getting thousands of comments like amen that appeared to be coming from fake profiles. Other examples included AI-generated pictures of flight attendants or children with art, all with strange engagement patterns. One interesting note on this as well is that in mid-2023, Reddit faced a result over charging for its API access, something that it had kind of given away free before, and this was impacting many people who had built apps and had built their livelihood on it. But they said that part of the reason they had to do this was that this API access was giving huge AI companies a place to train their AIs, basically giving their AIs access to all of Reddit's data. And this created an interesting loop. You see, a lot of AI content at that point had made its way onto Reddit. Reddit had already been inundated with AI comments and content. And Professor Toby Walsh funnily noted that it will be interesting to see, what happens if we get a feedback loop, given that we are now training AI on AI content. But basically, because of all this, by 2024 and into 2025, the line between the crazy conspiracy dead internet theory and reality was more blurred than ever. In fact, this has caused a lot of pop culture crossovers and so on. And just the amount of threads I've seen where there's been someone commenting, how do you know this entire thread isn't bots? How do you know you're not a bot, etc., has become just a big thing. But let's just quickly run through the claims and the reality check just for anyone kind of catching up so far. So the first claim is that most internet users and content are bots or AI after 2016. The reality of this is bots and AI content are indeed prevalent, but not to the totalizing extent that the theory suggests. Essentially, it has been shown that bot traffic can make up anywhere between 40 to 60% of the internet. That is alarming, and for me, that would definitely put this in the realms of this theory has definitely got some weight to it, but I guess in the totalitarian extent that the originator of the dead internet theory alleges, that means it's not really true, But I think it is rising massively. Claim 2 was that a secret coalition of the government are intentionally replacing the internet with a fake internet to control people. This one is very, very interesting. But there's just not enough evidence to say that that is true. I think there is evidence to say elements of that is true. And I think there's definitely enough evidence to say that, there is state actors trying to influence elections and government in this way. I think there's definitely some truth to that. It would be naive to say there isn't. Content is repetitive is claim 3, formulaic and sterile because it's basically all AI generated. I think this is true. I think most of that is true. I don't think all of the traffic is true because I know people who post stuff. I've seen people posting stuff that I know is real. I know them from real life. I've gone outside recently. My wife and I post content online, so I know that's real. My friends post content online, so I know that's real. I've seen them take the pictures. We could be in a simulation. Just, I guess that is true. But to that extent, I've also seen tons and tons of online content that isn't real. So, like, I know for a fact isn't real. So, yeah, it's a mixture, isn't it? Let's imagine for a moment that the extreme version of the dead internet theory is 100% correct. That indeed the majority of online personas are made of bots and most content is AI generated propaganda and the real human experiment has been suppressed. What would that mean for society? It would be an Orwellian scenario. Those in control of the bot's AI could manufacture a consensus on any idea. Public opinion might just be an illusion, a hall of mirrors crafted by AI. The populace could be guided to certain consumer choices or political views by a constant stream of subtle AI messaging. Essentially, it would amount to a form of mass brainwashing or at least mass pacification. And this is true in many ways. Like, I think look at the 2024 election, look at the 2020 election, look at the 2016 election in the US, and then look at COVID and look at, the Israel-Gaza situation and all of these things. Like, we will find it impossible because there's so much noise right now to actually fact check anything unless you go and actually get on the ground of what's happening and talk to the people at the very top of this. Generally speaking, you are taking your information from the internet. And the media is taking its information from the internet. And then the so-called experts are taking their data from data that they are getting mainly from the internet. And you cannot trust that all of these so-called experts who got a lot of things wrong in COVID, for example, have actually gone and done their research on the ground because most of them weren't able to. So, I don't want to say this is true, but it is true to say that if most of the content online is generated by AI or is pushed by certain narratives, it is easy to make us believe things because we don't most of us don't have the time to go and fact check everything. And I mean, really fact check anything. Like, you might say, oh, well, this source told me this, and that is a reputable source. Well, it might have been 10 years ago. Who knows if it is now? You know what I mean? So, I don't want to get too into this conspiracy theory, but the point here is, if it is true that 100% of the content online has just been generated, then everything we think we know comes into question. That is the simple fact of it. Look, I think obviously some of this is true for various reasons, right? There's obviously a reality to this for an extent because there are market forces that would make people want to create more bots and make more information and push more information in order to make money. There's also clearly going to be some state actors who will get heavily involved in this, whether it's the NSA, MI6, the KGB or FSB, or, the Chinese state police and so on. Not state police, you know what I mean? The Chinese government and so on are going to want to push their own narratives, get people on their side, push misinformation. All of that has to be true to an extent because we know it goes on, right? So I think there is definitely some truth to this. I'm just wondering, I always find it a little bit hard to think that there's some smoky room of guys that are in charge of everything. That's where I draw the line on this. I'm just wondering, how bad is this going to get? And it does make me wonder, how much of the information that I read online that I'm so-called knowledgeable on these days is actually grounded in truth. I think that's going to be an interesting rabbit hole to go down, and maybe something I could make a documentary on is taking the dead internet theory in maybe 3 segments and saying okay, well, I'm going to take 3 so-called facts that I found online and actually go back to the source. Travel out there, go to talk to the people who originally wrote the bloody thing and find out how much of this is true and how much of it was just made up by some AI generative content, It's an interesting theory, though. And honestly, before I dove into it, I will say I am kind of shocked by how much of the internet is definitely slop. So, yeah, look, I'm sure there's more to dive into on this because, like I said, I've probably skipped over some stuff thinking it's repetitive and whatnot. But if I've missed something crucial to this that you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments. But yeah, that is the dead internet theory. This is the Jason Hassett Show. I just thought this would be an interesting one to jump into. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And thank you to Nasir Masti for asking me to dive into this. It has been an interesting one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.